How to renew a PR card. In order to renew your permanent resident card, you must complete the application form, gather your supporting documentation, pay the fee, and submit the application to the relevant IRCC office. You should only renew your PR card if you meet the Residency Obligation. The Residency Obligation is a minimum of 730 days spent in Canada within the last 5 years, i.e., the validity of your PR card. If you've spent less than 730 days in Canada within the last 5 years, do not renew your PR card. Instead, spend as much time in Canada as you can before applying for a new card. If you renew your card without having met the residency obligation, you could lose your status. If you have spent less than 1,080 days in Canada within the last 5 years, IMMIgroup recommends that you wait until you have more days in Canada as well, in order to avoid the Residency Determination, which is a huge hassle, it's stressful, it's a lot of work, and failure to respond to the Residency Determination could put your status in jeopardy. Please note that this page is based upon completing the February 2019 version of the PR card application and may not reflect the most recent version of the application. Completing the application. There is one mandatory form you must complete in order to renew or replace your PR card. The IMM 5444 application for a permanent resident card, which is 4 pages long. Some people may have to complete additional forms. See the IMM 5445 Instruction Guide for details. Completing the IMM 5444 application. This is the main application form for renewing your PR card. The first thing you'll be asked for, in the top right-hand corner of the first page of the application form, is your UCI, which is your Unique Client Identifier. You were assigned a UCI when you first applied to IRCC, formerly CIC. It is 8 digits long, separated by a hyphen. If you do not know your UCI, you can leave this field blank. Top of the first page of the application form. The first section of the IMM 5444 does not feature a section letter. There are 2 rows of questions. 1. Language you prefer for correspondence. English unless you would prefer French. In that case, use this form. 2. Date you became a permanent resident of Canada. The date you landed in Canada, which is not the day you first came to Canada, if you first came as a visitor or a temporary worker or student. 3. You are applying to. Check one box. Obtain your first permanent resident card. Select this option if you have never had a PR card before because you immigrated before the PR card was introduced. Renew your present permanent resident card. Select this option if this is just a standard renewal application. Replace a lost, stolen, destroyed, or never received permanent resident card. Select this option if your card is gone or damaged. If you never received your first PR card, the one issued at landing, you'll want to use this form instead. Section A. Personal Details. In this section, you fill in your personal information. 1. Your full name as shown on your record of landing, IMM 1000, Confirmation of Permanent Residence, IMM 5292, or IMM 5688. Or last permanent resident card. Include a photocopy of your last permanent resident card. You need to include middle names if the document includes your middle names. 2. Your current name, if different from above. This field is primarily for women who have married and changed their name since landing, but you must complete if you have changed your name for any reasons. 3. Your sex, your gender as stated on your previous PR card. 4. Your date of birth. Your date of birth in year, month, day format, as stated on your previous PR card. 5. Your country or territory of birth. The country you were born in. 6. Your country or countries of citizenship. If you are a citizen of just the country you were born in, list that country. However, if you have other citizenships, don't forget to include them. 7. Colour of your eyes. This should match your eye colour on your current or previous PR card. 8. Your height. Your current height in centimetres, or if you prefer, in inches and feet. 9. Your current residential address in Canada, where you live permanently in Canada. For example, if you're a student away at school, this would be your home address and not your room at school. You must include the following information: your apartment number, if applicable, your street number, your street name, your city, your province, your postal code. 10. Your mailing address in Canada if different from above. If you want the card mailed elsewhere, work, school, then you can include a different address here. Also, if you live in a development that's just being built, you may need to put your mailing address here. 11. Your telephone numbers and email address. Include cell and home or work numbers. If you include your email address, any and all correspondence between IRCC and you will be conducted via email, except your PR card itself, of course. 12. Your current married status. Never married, if you've never married. Married, only if you are currently married. Widowed, if your spouse has died. Legally separated, only if you've signed a legally binding separation agreement. If you have not signed such an agreement but are physically separated, your status is still married. Divorced, only if you are legally divorced. Common law, only if you have declared your common law relationship to the government, i.e. through filing your taxes jointly, for example. Section B. Your immigration history. In this section, you will need to provide details about when you arrived in Canada. 1. Place you became a permanent resident of Canada. This is the port of entry, example, Pearson Airport, or the town or city, example, Toronto, you first landed in as a permanent resident, and the province, example, Ontario. 2. Have you ever been issued a removal order in Canada? There are 3 major types of departure orders. If you've been issued one, you must answer yes. Here are the 3 types. Departure Order, IMM 5238. Exclusion Order, IMM 1214B. Deportation Order, IMM 5238B. Note: a direction to leave Canada, IMM 1217B, is not a removal order. 3. Has an immigration officer ever issued you a report under subsection 441, or made the decision that you have not met the residency obligations required of a Canadian permanent resident? If you were found not to have met the residency obligation, or you were issued a 441 report, then you must answer yes. Note: this does not include if you received the Residency Determination the last time you renewed your PR card. Section C. Personal History. This section may require an additional page or 2 if you cannot fit all of the information in the available sections of the form. We recommend you printing off a second copy of this page and including it in your application package, or typing up the additional information and including the question numbers and attaching that page to your application. 1. Address history inside and outside Canada. Your address history for the past 5 years, or if you became a permanent resident less than 5 years ago, your address history since becoming a permanent resident. List all your addresses in chronological order, from the oldest to the most recent. If you've resided anywhere in Canada during your time as a PR, you need to include all that information here. This includes the place that you stayed when you first landed, or your student dorm, For 2 examples. 2. Work and educational history inside and outside Canada. Your work and educational history for the past 5 years, or if you became a permanent resident less than 5 years ago, your work and/or educational history since becoming a permanent resident. If you have not worked or studied, provide your other activity history, including location. List all your activities in chronological order from the oldest to the most recent. What they mean by activity is what you were doing instead of working or studying, if this applies to you. Here are some examples. Looking for a job, or it could be volunteer work, or it could be homemaker. 3. Travel history. Have you ever travelled or lived outside of Canada in the last 5 years? Or if you became a permanent resident less than 5 years ago, since becoming a permanent resident. Include all absences, including those due to employment, vacations, trips to the United States, and any other time you left Canada. This section is extremely important because it's how IRCC determines whether or not you've met the residency obligation. Note, if the officer reviewing your application has any reason to believe that you're not being honest in this section, your application could be delayed for months. Be honest and include every trip where you spent a minimum of 1 night outside of Canada. The period to be assessed is 5 years from the date you're submitting your application or the date you landed in Canada, whichever is more recent. Section D. Residency Obligation. Time spent outside Canada. This section is not mandatory unless you've spent 1,095 days, 3 years or more outside of Canada within the last 5 years. Note that completing this section will not automatically cause you to lose your status. However, not completing this section when you've spent 1,095 days or more outside of Canada will result in delays, at the very least, and the loss of your status at the very worst. 1. List all your absences from Canada in the past 5 years, according to the situation that applies to you. If you became a permanent resident less than 5 years ago, list all absences from the time you became a permanent resident to present. List your absences in chronological order from the oldest to the most recent. Situation 1. Absences while accompanying a family member who is a Canadian citizen. Name of the family member. Provide proof of Canadian citizenship. You will need to provide a copy of your family member's Canadian passport or Canadian citizenship certificate. Relationship to you. Provide proof of your relationship. The family member must be your spouse or partner, or if you are a dependent child, your parent. You will need to provide a copy of a marriage certificate or proof of a common law relationship. You have to list the addresses where you lived together, outside of Canada, and the dates you lived there. Situation 2. Absences while employed by a Canadian business outside Canada or in the Canadian federal or provincial public service. You need to provide proof of your employment, such as your employment contract, including details about where you were overseas as part of your job. Situation 3. Absences while accompanying a family member who is a permanent resident of Canada and who is employed by a Canadian business outside Canada or in the Canadian federal or provincial public service. Name of the family member. Provide proof of this person's permanent resident status and proof of this person's full-time employment. Your spouse or parent will have to prove both their PR status, copy of a valid PR card, and their employment. See Situation 2. Relationship to you. Provide proof of your relationship. You must demonstrate that the family member is your spouse or partner with a marriage certificate or proof of common law status. If you are a dependent child, you will have to prove the family member is your parent. Sections E and F. Consent to disclose information and statement of consent. This section authorises IRCC to verify your information with the Canada Border Services Agency, CBSA, and with the Canada Revenue Agency, CRA. You do not have to consent to this, and you can answer no to both. Answering no will not automatically cause you to lose your status. If you have been outside of Canada and you do not consent to sharing information between these 3 government agencies, your application will be delayed, and it is possible that you could be asked to provide additional information or even be sent the Residency Determination. 1. History of entries into Canada. By selecting Yes in the box below and by signing this form, I hereby give my consent to the Canada Border Services Agency, CBSA, to disclose the details of my histories of entries into Canada to Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, in order to assist IRCC in determining my eligibility for a permanent resident card. I also hereby authorise IRCC to collect the history of my entries into Canada from the CBSA. If you answer yes, IRCC will automatically verify the travel history you provided above in the section C and D if applicable with CBSA. If you do not, you may have to get a record of movement travel history document from CBSA in order to get your PR card. 2. Notice of assessment from the Canada Revenue Agency, CRA. I include the notices of assessment, NOA, issued to me by the Canada Revenue Agency, CRA, within the last 2 years, and I authorise IRCC to verify this information with the Canada Revenue Agency. Check this box only if you're providing your notices of assessment. You should provide them as it helps IRCC verify your employment records listed in Section C and makes the processing of your application smoother. Section G. Declaration of Applicant. In this section, you have read the terms of the application, and if you agree to them, and then sign and date the form. Post-dating this application will not help you meet the residency obligation. Neither will stale dating the application. If your application has been completed, but has been sitting around for a while, complete a new one instead of submitting the old one. 1. This declaration covers the information that I have provided on this form and all the information submitted with my application for a permanent resident card, as well as the attached accompanying documents. By signing Section F, you are declaring that the information is truthful, complete and accurate to the best of your knowledge. This means you're not omitting any information asked to you, and you are not lying, and you're agreeing to the bolded line that any false statements and material fact on the form will be used against you if you lie or otherwise conceal the truth on this application. Violating Canada's immigration regulations is grounds for both prosecution and removal from Canada. You are promising that the photos you provide with the application look like you. You are attesting that you are indeed a permanent resident of Canada at the time you submit the form. You are attesting that you're not yet a Canadian citizen, as you cannot have a PR card if you are a Canadian citizen. You are attesting that you have asked for help from IRCC's call centre, from a registered immigration consultant or a lawyer, or from a family member or friend if you didn't understand a question on this application. You're agreeing that this application can be used as a reference for future PR card renewal applications. You're attesting that you will update IRCC of any changes to the information you provide as soon as possible. The application is not just this application form. Don't forget to check the document checklist for what else you need to include with this application form. 2. Sign if you are an adult. If you are a minor, get your parent to sign. Do not post-date or stale date this application. Doing so will result in delays. If you're not replacing a lost or stolen PR card, you have now completed the form. Section H. Solemn declaration concerning a lost, stolen or never received permanent resident card. Only complete this section if you don't have your PR card anymore. 1. Complete this section only if you are applying to replace a lost, stolen, destroyed or never received PR card. Permanent resident card number. If you know the number, enter it here. If you don't, you can leave it blank or write unknown. Date of issue. This date was listed on your card. It is 5 years to the date before your card would have expired. If this is your first PR card replacement, this date is not the date you landed. My permanent resident card was lost, the most common situation. Stolen. If your card was stolen, you are expected to have filed a police report and to provide a copy of that report with this application form. If you're not sure the card was stolen, say it was lost. Destroyed. If the card was ruined somehow, or if you cut it up. Never received. If this is your first ever PR card that was never received, the one issued to you at landing, you do not want to complete this application. There is a different application. On or about this approximate date, you lost the card, it was stolen or you destroyed it. If you never received it, put the date it was sent to you if you know it. See your application status online for this date. At. This means the city or town it was lost, stolen or destroyed in. Under the following circumstances, full information must be provided below. For example, I lost my PR card while moving apartments, though you should provide as much detail as possible. I have made the following efforts to locate this document. If applicable, indicate police authorities notified and attach a copy of the police report or incident report number. For example, I went back to my old apartment and looked for it but couldn't find it. By signing below, you promise to destroy the PR card if you find it in the future. Only sign this part of the form if you have lost your PR card, it was stolen, you destroyed it, or you never received it. Supporting documentation. In addition to the completed application form, you need to submit the following to renew your PR card. A copy of your current valid or most recent expired PR card. Copy of the ID page of your most recent passport, or a copy of the ID page of your passport at the time of your landing, along with a copy of the landing stamp. During the application processing, you may be asked to submit additional documentation, including notices of assessment, copy or your record of landing or confirmation of permanent residence, copy of your driver's license or other accepted photo ID card, copies of all the pages of your passports held in the last 5 years, copy of a recent notice of assessment or university transcript or school record if applicable, copy of a name change if applicable. Additionally, if you completed Section D, you have to provide proof of your spouse's or partner's or parent's status and or your employment by an eligible Canadian organisation. Paying your fee. If you're applying without a representative, you can pay your fee on IRCC's website. Note, you can no longer pay your fees using the IMM 5401 fee receipt form. Submitting your application. Your application must be submitted by mail or courier to IRCC's office in Sydney, Nova Scotia. By mail, P.O. Box 10020, Sydney, Nova Scotia, B1P 7C1. If you're intending on mailing your application package, please use a form of registered mail so you can be sure your package is delivered. By courier, 49 Dorchester Street, Sydney, Nova Scotia, B1P 5Z2. We recommend sending your package by courier because you will be able to track it. Checking your status. Once you've submitted your PR card application and it's been entered into the IRCC system, you can check your status online at canada.ca or by calling IRCC at 1888 242 2100.